from this planet dates back 33 years, and that departure coincides with the Lake Nyos gas calamity. I'm referring there to one of Anglophone Cameroon's most iconic statesmen. That's the late Bernard Nsokika Fonlon, whose works and contributions to the development of Cameroon many in today's generation would hardly remember. And that's why we bring on board now. He is someone who wears several caps. He is still alive too. He actually rubbed shoulders with the late Fonlon. Martin, welcome.
Thank you very much, Divine. Actually, Fonlon was my teacher at the University of Yaoundé,
Right.
from 1972 to 1976.
Okay.
I was in the department. He was the head of the Department of African Literature.
Okay.
And I was a student of his.
Right. I mean, I just
Fun memories, yes.
I left this out in the intro because I thought you would have more clarifications to give us.
Right.
Progressively over time, his achievements, the contributions he gave to Cameroon are just fading away. Is it because we easily forget history and the actors of the past?
Yes, I think that is in part. And in part also because Cameroonians don't read.
Okay.
Cameroonians hardly read. Somebody once said that if you want to hide something, just write from a Cameroonian, put in a book.
Okay.
You know, he will never hardly ever read. And also, you know, as time goes on, many people of his generation tend to be kind of forgotten. Yeah, which is unfortunate.
One other explanation could be that the Lake Nyos gas disaster actually just overshadowed his passing.
Exactly so. The tragedy of Lake Nyos, where we lost over 1,700 souls, brothers and sisters who were killed in that disaster.
And thousands more livestock.
1,000 more livestock, yes. And it just coincided with the passing of Professor Bernard Nsokika Fonlon in Ottawa, Canada.
Okay.
You know, so a tragedy of that magnitude in the country obviously overshadows the passing of individuals.
All right.
And that is what happened in the case of Professor Bernard Nsokika Fonlon.
Right.
He died this day, the 26th of August in 1986. That's 33 years ago.
Yeah, 33 years. Now, you were not only an admirer of the man, he also actually served for you or to you as a mentor.
Yes.
What are some recollections you have of him?
Well, recollections have to go back even long before I ever met him.
Okay.
Because, you know, when we were in Cas Bameli, for example, in the early 70s, I was in Cas Bameli from 70 to 72.
Decades before I went there.
Yeah, because perhaps before you were born.
Right,
I don't know.
right.
Yes, so before then, actually, what happened was that my brother, Kenya Jumbam, was a writer, was a private secretary of his when Fonlon was the minister in the government.
Right.
So he was actually somebody whose name was already very familiar with us, to us, in our family, for example. We already knew about him long before I ever met him in 72 when I went to Yaoundé. So there had always been that kind of bond at the family level. And you know, when you haven't met a man like that in person, and he was such a personality, people talked about him.
Okay.
You know, he was all over, almost a legendary figure. You know, you kind of build a picture of him on your mind.
Okay.
You see? And when you met him in person, sometimes that picture gets shattered. For example, when we were in school, we used to talk about him, and another one too was Professor Anomangu, his friend.
Okay.
And we had this picture of these two men as you build such a picture in your mind of some great big figures, and it seemed to translate into the physical presence of the man.
Yeah.
You imagine the man to be a tall, huge man, and when you met him in person, very simple man, medium height man, and he's you know, just can pass completely unnoticed.
Okay.
Yes, when we were at the University of Yaoundé, for example, and at the University of Yaoundé in the 70s, I must say that we had really some great figures in this country.
Right, the Melones.
Melones, the Thomas Melone. Thomas Melone was in my department of, I think, letters,
Okay.
and his brother Stanislas Melone was in law.
Okay.
And there was in Tamak in law, you had Professor Nomangu, Jacob Ngu in QS, you had Joseph Mbui, who was the the dean of the Faculty of Letters when I was there.
Who became one-time Minister of Education?
Sorry?
He one time became Minister of Education?
Yes, I think many of them did get into government. I don't know, I don't recall. Yes, but I think Joseph Boy was a minister. And there was also Professor Marcien Towa, who was a great philosopher. So those are the names.
There was Daniel Lantum too.
Daniel Lantum was there. Father Engel Ben Ven, a Jesuit priest, a great historian. Well, those were the figures that characterized the University of Yaoundé in the early 70s. The Njema couple, Mrs. Dorothy Njema and her husband Martin Njema was a historian. I mean, those were figures who were kind of oscillating around the University of Yaoundé at the time, and those were great names. And I knew this because later on when I went for further studies, and you're in the university, I was in Paris, and everybody was talking about Professor Miloni, Professor Daniel Lantum, Professor Fonlon, in German. I mean, that's where they carried the name of the university was very high at the time.
I think that was a generation. I mean, it gets me recalling a book I read, Great People of Our Times, or Great Men of Our Times.
That's right. And Fonlon was quite an outstanding figure, at least in the area where we were, because we were also in the African literature.
Okay.
And is someone you know, known for a long time. And he created a magazine, a publication called Abia. And that magazine was known all over the world. And it's on later on, if you go to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., you have all those piles of a magazine there, and people are carrying out research.
I wonder if we could find one copy in Cameroon.
I doubt it. You would not find it.
Even at the National Museum? Not sure.
Maybe, yeah, they could be.
So what was the content of the magazine?
The magazine actually was, dealt a lot with research into literature, research into anthropology, sociology, mainly dealing with Cameroon, which was great. I know, for example, a certain Eldridge Mohamedou, I think they call him, who was a great researcher who did a lot of research in northern Cameroon, and the Lamedas, northern Cameroon, and the culture and traditions of northern Cameroon. And he published a lot in that magazine, Abia. And of course the magazine went with Fonlon, unfortunately, and has never been revived. But it was one of the great products of Professor Bernard Fonlon.
And he went on to be promoter of the Catholic Seminary?
Yes, he did, actually. Well before that, I think. What happened was that the bishops of the ecclesiastical province of Bamenda at the time, I think Paul Vedukov of Bamenda, Pius Awa of Boya, and I think Cornelius Eswa of Kumbu. I think those were the three dioceses at the time in the ecclesiastical province of Bamenda. Decided to create a major seminary in Boya. I mean, in Bamenda, which is in Bambui today. Before then, the priests were being trained in Nigeria. So they came up with this with the idea, and Fonlon was really a great supporter of it, because when the bishops came up with the idea, he wrote, you know, a letter which was published, and you know, each time Fonlon wrote anything, it created waves, right? So he really supported the seminary and gave his idea of what a seminary could be or should be, and I believe the bishops did look into that seriously. And
he didn't stop there. He moved on to create what was called the Guelph Yaoundé. I mean, bring it down to Association of Creative Writers.
Exactly, the Guelph Yaoundé project. Guelph is the University of Guelph in Western Ontario, in Canada.
Canada.
Yes, the Department of English was led then by Professor Douglas Killam, and there was a wonderful woman working with him called Elizabeth Cockburn, who had been in Bambui. She and her husband had been in Bambui, in the teacher training college in Bambui back in the probably the early 70s or the 60s, I don't remember. And so she knew Cameroon very well, and she worked with mainly primary school teachers. You see, so when she went back, she and Fonlon started, I don't know when they started their relationship, I mean their collaboration. It must have been when she was here. She went back to Guelph, and Douglas Killam, who was the department head at the time of English at Guelph University, came up with the idea with Fonlon to create what they call the ACT, Association of Creative Teaching.
ACT, right? I mistook it for writers.
No, Association of Creative Teaching, ACT. And it was basically the idea of getting primary school teachers and their students and their pupils to create their own works of literature.
Okay.
And it is amazing if you want to look at the product at that time, how what primary school teachers and their pupils can do.
Okay.
Why they create their own, I mean, they write their own stories, or rewrite folk tales from their traditions, and they are taught in schools. It was a wonderful project.
Right.
Unfortunately, it died with Fonlon, and we met. I was part of the project when I was a student in Canada, because we met in Toronto with Patrick Mbungwe, late Patrick Mbungwe, and Fonlon, who came from Cameroon with my brother Kenjo, was in Canada too at the time. So we met at the University of Toronto, and we worked on some of the stories. I was amazed what I saw. And I realized how difficult it was. I mean, I've been writing for a long time, how difficult it was, or it is, to write for children.
Okay.
You know, sometimes, you know, I cannot bring myself to that level to write a story which will impress children.
I remember
it was quite an eye-opener for me at the time.
Right.
Yes.
I remember Mr. Tanfu, where is my sheet? Where is my good?
Right. The stories written for children were amazing.
Right.
But then, you know, I recall one of the meetings we had with, it must have been about, I think it was about 1983 or 84, shortly before I left Canada. We met at the University of Toronto, or also Guelph, and among us at the time was Fonlon, and some other people came from Yaoundé. Asanga, who, you know, became a politician, influential SDF man. Yeah. Professor Nalova Lyonga,
the current Minister of Secondary
Education, was there with us. There were other people, and among us, I mean, one of the greatest things that happened to me as a student of literature was that we had in our midst Chino Achebe from Nigeria.
Okay.
Was a friend of Dr. Fonlon's.
All right.
You know, yes, and he happened to be there, and I must have met Dr. Kilam, who said, well, Fonlon is here. And he was at Guelph at the time with us for a whole week. So it was, you know, with Fonlon, I did come personally to meet people like that. You know?
No doubt. I mean, little wonder why you became such an accomplished writer after all. When you rubbed shoulders with these,
yeah, rubbed shoulders with some of these people, and rubbed shoulders with Fonlon and with Achebe. What strikes you with them, or what struck me for a long time, was the simplicity of the persons. Whether it's Achebe or Fonlon, these are people who could pass you on the road unnoticed. Okay. You know, simple, soft-spoken people, and Fonlon was certainly that type, and he did a lot of things, and unfortunately, during his when we met him in Canada. Things were not going on well in Cameroon at the time. President Biya had just survived a botched coup d'etat.
1984.
84. And Fonlon was, he told us this himself, he told me personally, that he was being suspected as having been an accomplice in that coup d'etat. And from there on, I do not know whether that is a reason why he would never received his pension. Okay. But as a man who served this country for so long, as a minister, in several capacities, worked as at the University of Yaoundé, gave the University of Yaoundé, with his other colleagues, the people we mentioned earlier, as an international standard, which is still to be rivaled. And then, you know, he never received his pension. I don't know whether his next of kin ever did, but he died practically a pauper. And other people had to help him. You know, yes.
Oh, that's so sad.
What happened that he never got his pension is still maybe something for his biographer to reveal to us.
Are you thinking about it, a biography? It just crossed my mind as you were mentioning it.
Well,
someone should do it.
Yeah, someone should do it, actually. And I believe there may be people who are working on it. I don't know. But it could be something to think about. Now, 33 years later, that there's no biography of him, too, is something...
It's disturbing.
It's disturbing. It shows, actually, our collective failure as writers, perhaps, or as intellectuals in a country like this, to honor our own people who have gone ahead of us. I mean, you know, it's unfortunate. You know, so maybe I'm not blaming anyone. You know, you're asking me if I'm thinking of it.
Right.
The failure is collective.
It's so cool to hear you. I mean, admit that it's a collective.
Yes,
failure
yes,
anyway.
it is. So it is each time I think of Fonlon, you know, it is you know, at various levels. First of all, at a personal level, that our family had some bonds with him, my brother being his private secretary for a number of years.
Okay.
And then as a student for about 4 years at the University of Yaoundé, and even thereafter, you know, when I studied in the University of Alberta in Western Canada, and Fonlon was a regular visitor to Canada. When I was there, I met him for the African Association, it's a literature association in the Canadian city of Calgary.
Okay.
And he and I sat down and talked for a long time, and it was a question of him asking me if I could come and teach at the University of Yaoundé in his department, which is something he had even wanted me to do when I just left the university, you see. But then, of course, things changed. He was no longer the department head. And, you know, I moved to Douala when I came back to the country. Okay. And we maintained our relationship at quite a close level until he passed on, which was a very, very tragic thing. Personally, we felt it. And we hope he's resting in
perfect eternal peace.
For
and
sure, for sure.
Thank you so much for coming to let us remember this great Cameroonian.
Right. And also the people of Lagnios who passed on right at the same time with him. In fact, this 26th day in the month of August is the day Fonlon passed on, and I think the Lagnios disaster had happened just about barely a week before, I think. Okay. So it was a collective tragedy of our people at various levels, you know. And,
all right. Okay. Thanks for coming. And
no
well,
problem. Yes.
It's such a country we live in, right? People of that caliber go on. It's the death anniversary. Nothing is being said at the national level. You just heard it. His pension was not being paid, you know, even just before he passed on. Anyway, let's stay on. This is Cameroon. We're going to have to make it in this place or run away like those on mass exodus from the war torn rather.